post-match to a disastrous result for Everton, Tottenham 4, Everton nil, down in London. Commiserations to everybody travelling back up to the northwest. I've got Rob Veer, I've got Matt Flush with me here. Still contemplating how on earth that happened and the performance and the setup from Sean Dyche. Matt Flush, I usually have a strong debate about this sort of thing with him. So at first, I'm going to come to Rob Vera. Because I know me and Matt might come to blows towards the end of this. So, Rob, first of all, it's your first appearance this season. So, welcome back. And I wish it was in better circumstances, my friend.
Oh yeah, this is Everton playing terribly. This is where I thrive, right, Dave?
It's when you
Since
choose
I'm
to come on.
I'm that's what I'm a hater. Well, here's the thing is that it's hard it's impossible really for me to come on for home post match because you guys are in the Denby usually. So, it
Yeah.
makes no sense to try to remote someone in. So I'm left with the road matches, which let's be honest, for I don't know, the last 10 years or so, let's just say that playing on the road hasn't exactly been our forte. But so some of this is just I don't know if luck's the right word, but it's fortune, what have you. But no, look, it's it's all very Everton from the standpoint that this game coming off the heels of not only last week but of the very poorly timed quotes from the manager today, sort of alluding to the idea that the fans need to handle this stuff better, and it's really and I think he kind of created this sort of weird scenario about how, well, what everyone's expecting Europe and I'm doing the best I can. And like no one's expecting Europe. But it's I think that we
Yeah. I mean,
expect
sorry to interrupt you there, Rob. There are individuals from the Blue Room who do think that there may be a possibility that we qualify for Europe, but that remains to be seen, and we'll talk about Matt Flusk about that in a moment or
I
two.
must have missed
Yeah.
the
Do
but
carry on.
yeah, no, look, here's the deal. I'm told all the time that, hey, I feel like I could say this in my sleep. All Everton supporters expect is full effort and to be competitive and to be organized and what have you. And so, those comments are a way of deflecting from what I think was very valid criticism of the lineup decisions and some of the tactical decisions of a home opener where we weren't competitive. And so today, and believe me, I understand that there are mitigating circumstances like injuries, but I also would say that who are we missing right now? The most important piece we're missing is Jared Branthwaite, right? But we're also, who else are we missing? Are you telling me that Ashley Young being out or Seamus Coleman being out are the reason that we're losing these games 4-0 and being uncompetitive? I'm told also, we get lectured by the manager all the time that look, there's no way you can play these new players yet or these young players yet because they have to have Premier League experience, as if
Mhm.
getting Premier League getting Premier League experience requires playing in the Premier League. So I won't go around on that circular logic train. But what I will say is that if you're going to tell me that we're going to start the season in a completely non-competitive fashion, we're going to be 0-2 with a -7 goal differential. I'd rather see, I'd rather see as much Roman Dixon and
Mhm.
Jake O'Brien and get Lindstrom and Jai in there, who we don't seem to want to bring on until we're already down 2-0.
Mhm.
And then when we bring in Jai on,
Yeah.
we're the reason we have in Jai this season, by the way, Dave, is because he struggled so much last season because at his last club, the manager took a guy who's a number 10 and put him on the wing. And so what did we do today? We brought him in and we put him on the wing, and we wonder why. And really, when you examine the injuries,
Yeah.
when you examine the poor setup, the poor decisions, the completely non-competitive two games that we've watched so far, the obvious conclusion, Dave, is that the fans are expecting a little too much and we need to relax a little bit. And I
Mm.
am sorry. I just want to say to the manager, I'm very sorry that I expected us to be, at least semi-competent in these two games. Now, I will say this: if the idea is that, well, I've got to play these known quantities in order to be competitive because of the risk of what happens when you play new players, young players, whatever. Tell me what two losses and a -7 goal differential and having not scored, how does that result reflect on that perceived wisdom?
Yeah.
I would say that it doesn't really seem to bear fruit, these ideas. And at the end of the day, um, you can say that, hey, we owe Sean Dyche for keeping this club up and for all the work he's done to make the best out of a terrible situation. All points that I completely agree with,
Mm.
but that does not make him above criticism on a match-to-match basis for decisions, for tactics, for frankly the parts of management we don't talk about very often, which is, I don't know, motivating
Yeah.
players,
Yeah.
getting them to play their best, maximum effort, all of that. So he's not above those things. That comes with being a Premier League manager. And
Yeah.
it was really, for him to say it was really early for us to be getting freaked out. I thought it was a little early in the season for him to be getting so sensitive about what is essentially the same critique that would be leveled at any manager after a 3-0 home defeat, and will certainly only gather pace after a 4-0 drubbing on the road.
I think he's got that as a defence at this stage of the season to start saying, well, we're only a couple of games in here. Look, we're naturally a football club. Every football club has knee-jerk reactions. I asked that question on my social media at half time, or I think when we went 3-0 down. Is it a knee-jerk reaction here to have a criticism of Sean Dyche, or an over criticism of Sean Dyche? I'm interested to get Matt's view on this here, because look, it's easy to say that I put in our WhatsApp group, didn't I? What we must have had some sort of record there, conceding 7 goals, not scoring a goal in the first 2 games of the season in the Premier League or whatnot. What really I had the bugbear for going before this match, Matt, was when he said that we've only got a 14-man senior squad to go down there to Spurs. The narrative he started coming out with, I think Rob touched upon it, is with young players. There's an insistence not to get them in somehow, some way. At some point, you will actually need them, as we saw today. With a couple of the lads that came on, and the one in which started at right back, which I don't know, many people might say is probably one of our better players down at Spurs. What's your take in his sort of approach so far? And, like I said, the thing he has got defensively is to say, well, we haven't got a squad. We're miles away from having all of our players fit. But when you look at it, really, we haven't got that many. Rob mentioned Branthwaite there. Who else is there that you throw in and you think, you know what, that's the type of thing that makes this squad a hell of a lot more positive to go to a game like this?
Yeah, you're not wrong, but we're not that threadbare at the back. It feels like we are, because the options that we got fit are likes of Keane and Holgate, who we know are just not really options anymore for us for one reason or another. But yeah, if everyone's fit, we've still only got one left back and 2 right backs, one of whom Sean Dyche will not play. I'm not counting Ashley Young as a defender. Like, I'm not sure what he is, but he's not. He's not a defender, is he? He's.
I don't count him as a defender either.
No. So yeah, that's not really an excuse. And I agree with Rob said there about, like, what is the point in signing players and then saying, "Oh, I can't play them because they got no Premier League experience." Like, well, how many other clubs say that? Like,
yeah,
so many other clubs will sign players from overseas and stick them straight in, and it pays off. And we see the payoff for us. I mean, and to that point, Ndiaye, he might not have Premier League experience, but he's got like 2 seasons in England under his belt in a much rougher league than this one. So, like, it just doesn't seem to add up. He's sort of contradicted himself when he says that. But I mean, it's deja vu, isn't it? We saw this last season with the centre half situation, and everyone crying out for Branthwaite, and eventually put him in, and he's not been out since. And he nearly got the England squad and stuff. And we're going to end up with the same situation with the likes of Jake O'Brien or Lindstrom, who literally came on and had our first shot on target, I believe.
That's right, yeah, he did,
with
yeah.
his first touch of the game.
It was our only, wasn't it? It ended up with our only shot on target in the whole
Probably
game.
our only, yeah. Yeah, it's just, he's making a rod for his own back, and he can't really start giving interviews to silly little newspapers about the fans having the wrong perspective if he's created a situation whereby it's very easy to criticise him. And I'm not someone who loves to criticise him. I'm not someone who thinks he should be sacked straight away, or it's just we're just not very good, are we? Like, just not
There's,
very good. I
I
mean,
think that there's
Matt
a
Jones made this point in our group chat, and it's
yeah.
like, well, yeah, we're not. But I mean, we were up against a team that spent about £300 million in the last 2 seasons, and we're scraping around for money. It's our own fault that we're scraping around for money, but it's an explanation, not an excuse. And when it comes to today's game, anything would have been an unexpected bonus. So I'm not letting this ruin me long weekend, and I'm not letting it sort of colour my view of how the season's going to pan out. Yeah, it's two aberrations, probably avoidable, but I'm not ready to press the panic button just yet.
No, I think it's important to keep that in mind. I mean, I am the kind of person, as you both probably know over the years that we've spoken. I have the panic button ready to press even when we've won games. I take it out with me everywhere. I have a 24/7 asleep next to it. Hope my wife's not listening to that. But in terms of the narrative that comes along with Dyche, I don't think he's the type of manager that likes to put excuses forward about himself, but that feels like he sort of edged that way so far in these first couple of games. Again, something else you alluded to here, Rob, and I was on Radio Merseyside explaining this when I heard his press conference yesterday. He's talking about 14 senior players, and then I think the other thing he said was when Everton under 23s played over Tranmere earlier in the week. I think it was on Thursday. He said that he was asked by Julia Bold, are there any of them impressed you? These type of players that you're gonna have to take with you, and his response was relatively negative towards that, in saying that no, they haven't got the experience to do so. That's not verbatim of what he said, but I'd ask the question back. Well, what's the alternative, Sean? What else have we got? What else can we do? You just want to have 14 players, then you're happy to go with that. You're happy to just work with those in training until the others come back. We've got a threadbare squad as it is. We've had that for quite some time. The praise that goes with Sean Dyche is the fact that he was able to manage a threadbare squad and keep us up in the Premier League. This is the fourth season running if we're in that direction, Rob. Immediately 2 games in, again trying to stay away from the panic button, but that's a big problem to me.
Yeah, well, why don't we kind of take a step back and maybe define some of this a little bit better, right? I think that it's okay to point out these first 2 games have been abject and they've been horrible. And that's not panicking. That is just making a basic observation. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's just the truth. And Sean Dyche gets very sensitive, and he's very sensitive about how he is perceived, that he does not like the stereotype that has built over time about him, of being a, quote, limited manager, of being an unsophisticated manager who only knows how to play one way. Well, Sean, you're not going to beat the charges when you are as obstinate as you constantly are about the idea of only playing young players when there is I'm sorry, only playing young players once your preferred experienced players have failed so often that you have to just relent, right? Like, that does not seem like a manager who is proactive in that regard. Now, there are some elements to this idea that, yeah, you've got to maybe bring a player along to a degree, but Jake O'Brien is a guy who was playing in the top professional league in France last season, had 27 appearances, played 2,000, I think like 2,700 plus minutes, something like that. Played and scored in the domestic cup final there. He's not this little kid who's coming from the under 19s who needs to be babysat, right? Like, we just played Brighton last week, who didn't hesitate to play their young new attacking acquisitions and have proceeded to go 2-0 to start the season. I think that we at times in our analysis of this sport are attached to notions and concepts that are outdated from the standpoint of, like take risk, for example, Dave. Is it a risk to play a young player is that risk greater than the risk of playing a known quantity experienced player who is consistently poor?
Mm.
To me, you're getting this, like, even if you agreed, which I won't just concede, that you'll get the same result out of a young inexperienced player versus a poor experienced player. Give me the young player that I can learn something about, who can learn from the experience. Like, there's no doubt to me that Roman Dixon, despite that result today, that is something he can build upon. Now he is Premier League experienced. I think he played well enough, frankly, if there are no changes in the health status of Seamus Coleman and Patterson and Young and others. Well, he should keep his spot. Do I have faith that he will? No, probably not. We definitely still need some reinforcements in the fullback area and so on. But again, I think that Sean Dyche plays himself when he bristles at any critique of him as, the very thing that he works so hard, it seems to be, which is someone who is going to do it his way, and any complaints about it are somehow a kind of lack of appreciation of all that he's done. And I think that those are separate things. I don't think that Everton supporters this season, frankly, after what the last several years, I don't think any of us have any crazy notions about finishing in Europe or having a Cinderella season. And by the way, we've only lost 2 games, Dave, to your point about panic.
Yeah.
There's no reason we can't comfortably finish still, in that kind of, I don't know, 12th
Mid-table.
to
Yeah.
16th range. Fine. But it doesn't mean that these 2 matches that we have seen that have been about as bad as it gets are ones that we cannot rightly point out require improvement, and that improvement starts at the top. He cannot take the credit for keeping us up and for things when it all goes well, and then just say it's not my fault if we lose 2 games by a combined score of 7-0. That is not leadership, that is not accountability, and that is not the way out of this mess.
Mm-hmm.
The way out of this mess is to look in the mirror and consider, can I be doing more? Can I be trying something different to alter results? And by the way, Dave, the last thing I'll say on this is, we could be 0-2 to start this season, but how differently would 0-2 feel if we'd lost, let's say, 2 games, 2-1, and we'd gotten to see these flashes from Jake O'Brien and Njai and Lidstrom, and we'd be able to say, we're not winning yet, but it's so early. I'm not panicked because I've seen that there's a little promise here, and getting these guys legs under them is going to pay dividends later.
Yeah.
What do we do every season? We play this game where, well, we're going to give them almost no time on the pitch. We're going to wait till things are horrible and everyone's mad, and then we're going to put these guys into that toxic situation and say, go perform. And it is the Everton cycle that we cannot break out of, and some of that has to start with the manager saying, you know what, we may need to have creative solutions, because let's be honest, Dave, I cannot imagine a bar that is lower for most teams than what we have, which is essentially, like, that's the thing is Sean Dyche is not under any threat of being sacked. We are not under threat in August of being relegated, right? And no one is pressuring him or expecting a top 10 finish. Those sound like the kind of conditions where, if anything, Dave, you should feel free and liberated to go in and say, I'm going to take a few risks here, because we have the luxury of being able to develop these young players. This is the time to develop these young and new players, so that by the time the real meat of the schedule hits, that's when we can hit the ground. We can really begin to come on and get to the place where we want to get by the end of the season. But to me, this just is limited thinking, and it's got to change.
The considered opinion, which I think you've pretty much done there, would say, yeah, you've got 2 games there. I mean, what I sort of do at the start of a season, I'll value every opponent that we have and think, okay, is this where you're expecting, or you would expect to get your results from these? Would you expect to get your points from this? Out of that first 2 games, I would have expected to get something from Brighton at home. So to me, as I'm looking at it, that's sort of a minus on the list of points that I think we're going to get as I go through each game that we've got coming up. The manner of this that's concerned me is the way in which we've played, the comments Dice has made in the first one, I think it was really, really naive for him, a man of his experience who basically made a career on saving clubs at the Premier League. Almost, well, he come out and complained about fans. He criticised Everton fans. That's a big no-no if you're whatever manager you are. That's a huge no-no to do that, particularly after the game at Goodison. Any game, really. I mean, a lot of our fans rightly walking out when we go 3-0 down. I'd be doing that right now, especially got a 200-odd mile trip back up to the northwest, to Liverpool. But look, I understand the difficulties it is. We all understand that. Every single one of us gets that. Every single one of us wants us, it has to be the priorities to remain as a Premier League club. If people saying, and if you go back and listen to our predictions podcast just before the season started, Matt, who was sort of just sort of joking about them when we were joking with him, I think he predicted 8th. And a couple of the other guys predicted 8th, and I said something like 14th or something like that.
Sure.
I'm not absolutely not taking any credit, saying I told you so here, because like you rightly said, we're 2 games in, we might well and go and finish 8th. Be absolutely delighted if we did. That epitomises the point you've just made there, of saying this should be the relative time where you've got a bit of freedom here to see, to
Shouldn't these first 2 matches be a free hit, Dave?
Oh, exactly. But the manner in which we've lost those 2, the manner in which that we have a lot of difficulties, we've all spoken about a lot anyway before the season started, and I'll go into that in a second, then, it shows how further into the pale that we've gone. If me and you are still spending the best part of our post-match here talking about issues that Sean Dyche has got, and again, I'm not going near saying you've got to sack Sean Dyche. I mean, on my social media,
no, I'm not saying that either. No, granted, as soon as we can get a better manager and our ownership situation is resolved,
well, that's it.
Sure,
he doesn't.
No, I know that.
Yeah, the man doesn't deserve to lose his job. Absolutely not. Given what he's done to us and what he's capable of doing, absolutely not. I'm just being surprised by, again, that word, the naivety of somebody with that much experience in these sort of situations, with a club that doesn't have X amount of money to spend, with a club that doesn't have a particularly sizable squad. With him coming on and saying we've got 14 men to take down to London. Look, the man doesn't ship miracles. Nobody does, but he's the type who edges towards that more than anybody else, and that's the issue I've got. At this stage, really, after 2 games. I mean, the other thing that now turns our attention to, Rob, is we've got just over 2 weeks to go and address what a lot of these issues are. And the one that immediately sticks in my mind, the one that predicts every single game is going to stick in my mind, is the lack of attacking options that we have. And and Dai come on. I thought he was good. He's got a lot of potential in him right there. Matt referred to him. We've signed a couple of players who you're excited about, the type of players that younger fans would be like, well, I can't wait to see him, because you've been watching them on YouTube, a lot of videos, and saying, oh, they're really good at what they can do. Got that. Striker wise, though, you've seen it today. Calvert-Lewin not in form. Calvert-Lewin struggling to get any Everton player around him, which is an issue of its own itself. Mm-hmm. But there's no alternative. And the reason there's no alternative is you put Beto on, who just looks like Bambi on ice to me. And then you've got Mopé on the bench as well. And dare I say it, I'd rather see him come on there, because he's somebody who he has a touch. He's been a Premier League player in the past, as much as we can sit here and criticise him. But that is a reflection of where we're at that in that particular position. We've had that for a while. We've had it for several seasons now, not having an alternative up there to Calvert-Lewin. When he's not been fit, we've really struggled. When he's been fit, we've struggled because he's been out of form. That is an issue that needs addressed, and we've got 2 weeks to do so. How are Evan again?
6 days, don't we? Don't we have 6 days really to do it?
How are we in that position once again?
I mean, part of the reason we're in this position again is because we keep granting exclusivity of owners and negotiations, and then the deals never get done. I imagine that's a big part of it. I think that we are going to. How many times over the last few years, Dave, do we have these kind of scenarios where we're like, we almost got this player
Mm.
over the line, like Kudus and
The point on that, Rob, as well, to add to what you're saying there. There aren't, you probably count on one hand how many of them are actual strikers, which has been a massive issue for us for a long
Well,
time anyway.
sure, but I'm even just talking about attacking players
Yeah,
and
yeah.
bringing goals into this thing, and I will especially watching the first two matches of Minta at Brighton. I am especially annoyed at the lack of that Calvert-Lewin to Newcastle deal getting done. Because he was, by all accounts, holding out for more money for a guy who has missed a ton of time and been wildly inconsistent. I guess it is up to him to decide how much he's worth, but it has certainly put us in a position where our most talented striker is still Calvert-Lewin, and yet he does not. I never want to do that thing, Dave, where I start openly questioning professionalism, but I think it's probably fair to ask, is he playing at 100% of his capability right now or does he have an eye on the exit door?
Yeah,
And
because there's a lot of baggage to come with that, isn't there, as well?
yeah,
That's the other side of him as well.
yeah. But in terms of, when we talk about scoring and attack, I mean, we are talking about the whole setup though. I mean, the weird thing is that we have four strikers in this squad, one of whom Shermidi is injured right now, who I actually would love to see more of, but I don't imagine under this manager we will see more of. And unless Calvert-Lewin is gone, but at that point you'd assume, well, maybe you would assume someone else is coming in. I also assumed when Onana was gone that someone, some other corresponding signing would come in, and that hasn't really borne fruit either. But look, I think part of it is the lack of talent. Yes, we need more attacking talent, but I'd also say, you went out and got a number 10, you got a winger, and you've just made the decision in these first two games that they weren't worth playing or that they couldn't play. And, the reasons for why they didn't play or couldn't play or shouldn't play or whatever are varied. If you want to tell me it's about conditioning, then I would say, well, what have they been doing? I thought the Gaffer's Day was to prove how fit all these guys were and to make sure that they were ready for these games. It's strange to me that these players played a lot of preseason minutes and then just somehow are not ready to play now. I don't understand that, but I would also argue that compared to the years, especially think of that Lampard season where we almost got relegated. I mean, we might have more attacking talent now than we actually had in those really horrific years, but the deployment of them or the unwillingness to play some of them is going to kind of keep that from realizing itself. All that said, for regardless of the reasons, we're not scoring goals, and part of the issue being that we didn't score goals last season, and then we came into this one with the manager saying, yeah, I want to play all those guys who didn't score many goals last season. I'm going to play them. I'm just going to keep playing them, and expecting a different result seems a bit naive. Now, I will say that if the formula is for Everton to be a team that wins games 1-0, or, God forbid, scores 2 goals and wins 2-0, 2-1, then it starts by getting your best player back defensively, and that's Jared Branthwaite. I think part of we talk all the time about balance. I mean, if the defense is compromised, that compromises the attacks. The midfield is an issue. It keeps there from being that inflow of chances up to the attacking levels, and can also put pressure on the defense. It's all a balancing act. But I would just say that if we're going to struggle in these early stages of the season to come back to this, we ought to be struggling with a purpose. I know that sounds strange to say, but if you're going to struggle, you might as well be struggling with the purpose of, we're going to use this time, especially in a game, like you said, where we wouldn't have expected to go to Spurs probably anyway and win a game. I understand that early in the season. They're really good. But if I'm going to go up there and have a tough result, I'd rather, do what we did for Roman Dixon and get a bunch of guys minutes. I am tired, Dave. I know that one of my core bits online seems to be making fun of Michael Keane, but it isn't even so much about Michael Keane as how many games of the Tarkowski-Keane partnership do we have to see fail over and over and over again before we say, you know what, maybe we should try something different.
I.e. the one that we've gone and paid £15 million for.
Yeah, I was saying this before. I naively thought that we signed Jake O'Brien to avoid this very situation, so that if, for instance, Tarkowski, who's carrying a knock today, couldn't play, we could insert this guy who has senior football experience and is young and promising in English and all those things into the lineup. And again, I expect that Jake O'Brien will probably play if it plays out like Branthwaite did last year, which, by the way, it's eerily similar this start to the season.
And he looks similar too.
Yes, Keane's, he wouldn't play Branthwaite to start last season because, quote, experience. We got heavy, two pretty heavy defeats to start the season, and then suddenly Branthwaite was experienced enough to having been at the club or sat on the bench or watched Michael Keane or whatever to then play, and then it all turned around from there. Again, don't know if Jake O'Brien will be that good, but that's the entire point. I don't know anything about him. And I want to take this period and learn something. I want to see the manager who I don't want fired right now because there is no way to fire him, or to sack him. I want him to show me that he is not this two-dimensional caricature that so many have made him out to be, probably including myself, and show some adaptability and say, I'm going to try some different things. I expect next week for there to be some, new ideas. There must be. He cannot possibly look at what we've just seen and say that consistency is the remedy to this horrific football that we've watched so far. And so we've got work to do in the next 6 days in the transfer window for sure. Don't know if anything's going to happen. I think the most likely thing that happens is someone like, Kieran Trippier comes in and we've got another right back, which wouldn't be the worst thing.
No.
But we just got to play some of these guys and just kind of figure out if we've got anything with them. That's all we can really do.
Yeah, I mean, focus comes back to Kevin Thelwell and what he can do in the next week or so. Which I've been a massive critic of his. I think he's done well this summer. But obviously the attention goes back towards him. We've got 2 games at Goodison coming up. We've got Doncaster in the Carabao Cup on Tuesday. We've got Bournemouth, which now has become for most of us, a massive game to go and get 3 points out at Goodison. Yeah. I hate to put that sort of emphasis on it at this stage of the season, but that's us wrapping up the post-match. Delighted to have Rob back on. And Matt, when I don't know where he can find an internet connection around Liverpool City Centre, but
less said about the actual game, Dave.
Well, there you go, mate.
There's not much else to talk.
Yeah, exactly. We managed to do it though. Plenty more reaction coming up, as you know. Blue Monday's back as well with me and Les Roberts, and then you've got our brand new show on Tuesday mornings with Matt and Paddy for the Everton byline, which is absolutely terrific, and thanks for all the feedback with that. Always give us feedback with everything that we do. Les will have everything on YouTube, as he always does as well. Keep the high ratings come, keep talking to us, get in touch. We'll take your comments, we'll talk to you, whatever it is you want to do. That's what we're here for. Dare to say, up the Toffees once more when we get back to Goodison for a game against Doncaster on Tuesday. We'll see you on a post-match back then.